Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Next in Queue. My name is Rob Dwyer and I am your host. And today, a first on Next in Queue, I actually have two guests joining me today. Tom Silzell and Abby McBride from CX Solution Source. How are you guys doing?
We're good.
Good. Thanks for having us.
It's great to have you. I'm very excited about it. So before we get into the really exciting stuff, Tom, why don't you just give us a quick overview of CX Solution Source and what you're doing these days?
Yeah, you bet. We're primarily a BPO placement broker. So we started, I've been in this business for a long time, as I'm sure we'll get to. But we started about a year ago, and essentially we work with clients to find good, strong BPO partners. We also have a consulting organization as well as a talent placement organization. So yeah, it's good. Business is good. A lot going on.
Yeah. So I love that you said that you've been in this business for a long time, because I feel like that I've been in this business for a long time. And I tell people that I've been in this business for a long time. But this was really a second career for me. And you've been in this business since I was just about to get into high school.
Nice.
So
Thanks,
you've been.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. This won't be the last time that I will make you feel maybe just a little bit old. Abby, you are quite a bit younger than Tom and I both.
Just say it. I'm a kid. All right. And
I'm not gonna say that. You are grown, you're an adult. But Abby, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Do you know what 5-cent sundaes are?
No.
No, you don't have a clue, and that's okay.
She even knows what long distance calling is. She was
come on, Tom.
So Tom, you know what 5-cent sundaes are, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a promo. Yeah, I love it.
So you just tell us how you got your start in this business, and then we can talk a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So I went to the University of Northern Colorado and paid my way through school, blah, blah, blah. I was walking through the university center. At the time, I was a night security guard for a dorm. So I would stay up all night watching, the counter, and then I would go to class all day. And so I would do that 3 nights a week. Well, and it's brutal. I mean, that was brutal. One day I'm walking through the university center and a guy goes, "Hey, you want to make $5 an hour plus commission?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, absolutely." And so I went and interviewed at MCI, which at the time, they were battling AT&T. And that's how I started as an outbound telemarketing rep, working part-time at MCI. And I haven't left since.
And that was 1990, which is why I'm wearing my Pixies hoodie. Just to set the stage, 1990 was also the year that I went to my first concert.
Wow.
I saw Aerosmith on the Pump tour.
Very nice.
With the Black Crowes opening up for them. Nobody knew who the Black Crowes were.
Yeah, no one even knew who they were back then.
I didn't know who they were, and I was like, these guys are awesome. Like, right. I got to check these guys out. So, Ice Baby was on the charts. Belle Biv DeVoe was hot back then. Abby's like, I've heard of Ice Baby, I'm sure.
The mullet was in.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have
back, by the way. Yeah.
Doc Martens.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I know
some of that stuff's back.
Yeah,
absolutely. Now this is pre flannel, right? We're not quite the flannel.
Right.
My flannel years were just right around the corner. Right on.
I've never left my flannel years. I wear a lot of flannels.
Well, you do live in Western Colorado, right? You're out in Grand Junction.
I am. Yeah.
It gives us an excuse. All right. We get to look like hippies year round.
Yeah.
Flannel is
Birkenstocks in the summer. And
Yeah.
I typically wear just tennis shoes like Vans or, you know, whatever in the winter, but I'm non-traditional, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you know, flannel in that part of the country was never really just only about the style thing. Like
That's
it's
right. Yeah. My Carhartt overalls. Now you really know that I'm in Western Colorado.
Now we're not messing around.
no, definitely not messing around. So MCI, which eventually became Verizon, right?
Yeah. So MCI was acquired by WorldCom. WorldCom, that was a whole big situation and it's a painful for anybody who was with MCI at the time. Then they went bankrupt. The CEO went to jail, and yeah, and then Verizon picked them up. So there's tons of MCI people that work for Verizon today. I mean, lots of them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you spent how long there?
Gosh, I was there for about 11 years. And when I left, so as I started to, MCI started to outsource. And that's how I ended up getting into the outsourcing business is at one point we had 2 million hours of outbound calling, which is such a massive amount of outbound calling. And they started to outsource that, and that's how I got into the outsourcing business. Is I ran the outbound outsourcing side for MCI, and we interviewed vendors and started moving. So that's how I was introduced to the BPO world.
Yeah, it also strikes me that you were at MCI really at kind of a pivotal time in the telecom industry because the internet was becoming a thing and all of the technologies that we almost take for granted now, right? I mean, Abbott probably doesn't remember a time when you couldn't do video calling. Do you remember, Abby, a time when you could?
I had dial-up internet when I was younger. Cut me some slack here.
Okay.
We've got to get a hold of her voicemail, Rob. Her voicemail
Tom, we don't have to bring that up right
like
now.
a 12-year-old little girl. She's like, "Hi, this is Abby."
It's been there since my first flip phone, okay? And I just forgot it was there.
Okay.
How embarrassing. And then your boss calls you and he's like, how about that?
Flip phones. I love it. See, we're in the time machine today. This was as I was going through my prep for this, I was like, this is going to be the time machine episode. We're going to have a lot of fun talking about some old school stuff, and now Abby even got to get in on it and mention flip phones.
Do you remember, Rob? Do you remember SkyTel and the two-way pager?
Oh yeah,
I
was not cool enough to have a pager, but I knew lots of people who had pagers. Like that was were cool.
It was texting. I mean, it was the intro into messaging and texting. Because we all had two-way pagers for lots of reasons. For statistics and blah blah blah. And but man, I'll never. That was the entry into messaging. Both personally and in business. So yeah, I'll never forget that. We'd all have them on our side, goofy.
Different colors, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So when you left MCI, you went to another company that I just think is fascinating from a history perspective. So you went to buy.com, which I think most people have not heard of buy.com. Now, did you start there before Blum took that back over or after he took it back over? Because I know it was right around that time frame.
Yeah, so Scott Blum sold the company he sold 22% of the company for like $250 million to I think it was SoftBank.
SoftBank, yeah.
Yeah. And that's when I started. And so believe it or not, and I might have my numbers a little bit wrong here, but we were just on the verge of $1 billion in revenue at the time I was there. And, Amazon was in our sites. They were in our sites. And that's all we thought about. And it was super fun. I mean, it was a really fun time. I'd moved to Southern California. It was a classic Southern California office space where you're riding scooters around. And, I had a bar in my office, that kind of thing. It was super fun. But then Amazon just crushed us, and the model itself didn't really hold up. And so it kind of fell apart. And then Scott bought it back for again, not sure the exact numbers, but around 20 million for the same, and then he sold it again to Rakuten for another 250 million. That's the gig we want right there.
Right. He ended up doing all right in all of that for sure.
He sure did. Yeah, he sure did.
Yeah. So, earlier in your career, right, you're around the transition in telecom to people going mobile, right? Whether mobile phones or pagers, as you talked about, and then really kind of that early .com, even the .com bubble, right? But kind of the time when some of the things that we see today that we just take for granted, right? Absolutely. These giants of the world, like this was the time when nobody, like, I think about that time, like Amazon wasn't actually making a profit back then.
Not at all. Not even close. Not even close. But that was the model. You were selling advertising and selling things, like we were selling stuff under cost and making it up with advertising. And Amazon was, at least, they were doing the same thing, but they were selling it, at a profit. But yeah, they weren't making money. I mean, it was an interesting time. And everyone was like, the internet's taken over, and in 5 years, no one's ever going to need a retail store again. Right? That was kind of the mantra then.
Yeah, it was fascinating to me, before we hopped on today, I was reading an old Forbes article that was about right when Plum was buying back buy.com. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about how the future, because, that they still called it e-tailing.
Right. That's right.
E-tailing. Right. That was still less than 1% of all retail sales. And, they were saying, this model where these .coms, as they still always referred to them, taking over the business is just not going to be there, right? It's just going to be part of, the Walmarts of the world where, they have an online presence. And certainly Walmart has done great things with their online presence, but I think we all recognize that that wasn't maybe as prescient as the Forbes writer thought it was.
Yeah. Well, and that was, like I said, that was kind of the prevailing mantra of the industry, is why would you ever need, retailers? And the answer is, you still need small business. You can't, people still like to go. I was in the mall the other day, which for me is an awful situation. But I've got my 12-year-old son and I've got my 15-year-old son, and we're looking for Santa hats, right? And there was nowhere to buy a Santa hat, but I found one at Walmart, but it took about an hour and a half to get through the line to buy it, right? So, in my head, I'm going, God, I wish I had time to just buy this online because I wouldn't have to worry it, So they're to each his own, right?
Yeah, it's interesting to me, the decisions that people make for online shopping versus brick and mortar shopping, and kind of some of the motivations that go along with that. I think that a lot of people look at Amazon as, and I'm not picking on Amazon, but I mean, they are the biggest, right? Sure. A lot of people will call out Amazon for crushing small businesses, and you can make a lot of arguments for or against whether or not that's the case. But I grew up in a time, and you did too, when when Walmart was doing kind of that same thing, but in a brick and mortar fashion. I grew up in a small town, and when Walmart came in, it drove out a lot of the small businesses. And if you wanted to be successful, you had to be successful competing against Walmart. And a lot of that just came down to service, right? And how you ran your business.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I do also, where I live is a small town and I grew up here. But same thing, when Walmart came to town, our main street kind of got depleted of, the toy stores and a lot of the things that you pick up at a Walmart at a 30 or 40% discount. But it was different. But I also think that the Amazons of the world have really brought us a level of competition, not only in retail, but in technology. And that, I mean, if you think about all the companies that, cloud-based call centers as an example, that Amazon is a big part of that, and the technology associated with that, and the customers' adoption of leveraging the internet for service is, so a lot of that benefit comes from companies like Buy.com and Walmart, and them really disrupting the industry. And we're seeing that even faster and faster and faster in all kinds of different facets.
Yeah, absolutely. So then after Buy.com, you did your stint there.
I did.
Then Sirius BPO is where
it is. It goes straight to BPO from there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you started at Silzell first. Is that right?
Well, yeah. So I actually started at Client Logic. So Client Logic, another SoftBank company, was in SoftBank had essentially built a BPO. Actually, I think they merged several together, and they built a BPO to support all of their portfolio companies, right? So the idea being all of these portfolio companies outsource all of this service and all this spend is going there. We're just going to build our own, right? And so I joined as a salesperson, and then and they were God, I think Client Logic was around 150 million, maybe 200 million, somewhere in there at the time, maybe 300 million, I don't know. But and then Client Logic acquired Silzell and took the Silzell name. And so so if you're looking at LinkedIn, it shows just Silzell, but there's a whole big, admittedly, I like smaller and medium-sized BPOs. I think they do a lot better job than larger BPOs. And if you work for one, it gets a lot harder, especially in sales. It gets a lot harder to do a deal for a larger BPO. So, we went from 300 million to 1.8 billion, overnight. And so that was an very interesting challenge from a Tom Silzell playbook perspective. Yeah.
So Tom, you just said something, and I'd like to explore that a little bit more. You said, I think small to medium BPOs do a better job than large BPOs. And I'd like to hear why you think that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and it has progressed in that, but small and medium and technology, to kind of go back to that earlier comment, technology has enabled a lot of growth in BPOs. So before, you needed to be supported by a larger BPO just because they had all the technology, they could afford it, and scale was there. Now, with technology, it really becomes an experience business for not only the employee, but the customer as well. And I feel like large BPOs are built for scale, right? If you're 500 or more, maybe even 1,000, somewhere in there, there's a point. You're going to be fine in a larger BPO. But if you have less than 500 or 1,000, you're just not going to get the experience that you need with a larger BPO. And there's a ton of really great people who have built these 100 million, 200 million, even $50 million BPOs that give you so much more attention. You're really a strategic client for them, and I just feel like they do a lot better job of investing in your business. So that's kind of why we built our company, is to enable smaller BPOs to get access to to business opportunities, to new client, new logo opportunities.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I absolutely agree with that. But it's good to hear it from someone that's seen that relationship evolve over time, particularly with the technology, because again, you hit on something that I think has really changed this industry pretty significantly, and that is the availability of really just doing everything in the cloud today.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to invest, 6 figures in an on-prem PBX system. I don't have to maintain my own server room. Like, there are just so many things that now, as even just a startup BPO, like I can spin up a BPO pretty quickly and be using subscription-based cloud technology
in a matter of weeks. I mean, if you had a client and you have the ability to hire people, the technology is no longer the long tent pole. It's easy, but larger BPOs, there's always a watermark, right? Where, you need to own the technology, because, at that point it's less expensive for larger BPOs to have on-prem technology and leverage, and get a little margin out of it. But yeah, you're exactly right, Rob. It's pretty easy. I got a friend who, it's public now, so I can tell you, Activist Connect, they just sold for $62 million. And I don't think I'm trying to think of, they've only been in business for 2 years. Maybe a little bit more, but I mean, can you imagine that starting a BPO 2 years ago, call it 3 for argument's sake, and selling it for $62 million? That's amazing to me. So good job, Felix, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we've reached a point where the technology just has absolutely leveled the playing field in so many different ways. I was just listening to a podcast that Brad Cleveland was on, and a lot of what he was talking about was exactly that, right? The power that eventually we got with the internet. It took a while before we could really do the kind of cloud-based stuff that we can do today. But with that, right now, all of a sudden, the differentiator is just service. Like,
that's right.
Because the tech is all there. Everybody has access to it today.
Yeah. It goes, and lots of people will tell you this, especially from MCI, but if from a service perspective, it is the people that you hire. And as difficult as it is to hire people in the US today, I mean, believe me, I talk to, we have 50 plus partners that we work with, on a monthly basis that we have access to. And every single one of them is struggling to hire in the US. And so we've seen a ton of activity nearshore, offshore, much more so than usual. And without technology, Rob, that, it wasn't even a thought that you could get the same level of support from a technology perspective in Jamaica or Panama or Belize or, some of these other countries, Colombia. I mean, we all know who we're talking about, but, even 2 or 3 years ago, the latency associated with that and the infrastructure in those countries, it just wasn't there. And now with bandwidth the way it is and the speed of networks, it doesn't matter. It's people. It's all people.
Yeah. It really is pretty amazing how it's changed recently. Just over Thanksgiving, I had an old friend on who runs a BPO in Honduras, and they just they just spun it up recently. So before he worked for a much larger, one of the big names that everybody knows. And that's kind of what you had to do for a long time when you were offshore. But, today it's like, oh, okay, we've got some people, we've got some experience, we've got the right time. We can just start this up. We can do it ourselves, and we can start small and get the right clients, and we can have our own business. And I think that's the difference, whether you're offshore, nearshore. The barrier to entry at one time was pretty significant because of all the hardware that it was going to take and the office space. And I think we've seen over the course, even though, you could do it before and a lot of companies did, but I think 2020 opened everyone's eyes to say, yeah, we can do work from home now. Like,
yeah,
technology's there to really enable us to do this, to do it safely, to do it effectively. And we can be just as good work from home as we were in, this big call center.
Well, I'll give you a couple of great examples of that. Abby's one of them, right? When Abby first started, I had leased some space in an office building, primarily because I wanted, as I'm bringing people on, I didn't want them to think that we were some fly-by-night, company, right? So I leased some space, and Abby will remember, she walks in and, I've got all these offices and, a kitchen and a conference room and, blah, blah, blah. But, he eventually just started working from home because it's so much easier. And it's just, believe it or not, you see where I am now. This is a shed that I converted to an office. So this really is right outside. I've got a little barn out here, and, it's by a creek, and my house is kind of up over here. But, you couldn't do that. You could not do this 5 years ago. You just couldn't do it.
Right. Yeah. The bandwidth certainly would have been number one, a challenge. And, no, number two, right, the applications that actually allowed the kinds of things that we see now. Like I started a podcast, and I don't think 5 years ago I would have ever considered that I had the technology to do that. Certainly not from my home. And no. Here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. The pandemic forced from a video, if you think about Zoom and Teams, really, those are kind of the two that have bubbled up to the top, in my opinion. But you just couldn't, you just could not do this with the way we're doing things now, and it's pretty darn effective. I still love face-to-face. I still love the ability to read the room. I still love building relationships when I can. But I traveled 300,000+ miles a year for 20 years, and I'm just not going to get on an airplane to, go have a face-to-face meeting that for the first time. It's just not something that I think is necessary these days. And so, anyway, that you're exactly right, Rob. Technology has enabled us all to do what we're doing and the way we're doing it, and I think life has kind of, and you're starting to see it with people resigning, and the challenges that people are choosing life over traveling around the country and sacrificing. People are choosing life.
Yeah. So Abby, I want to ask you, right? So you've done some retail stuff in the past, right? You have worked in brick and mortar locations. And now you're working from home, and you're a millennial, I assume. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I'm going to put you in that bucket. And
Right.
Even though I don't like stereotyping people, even by generation, I really don't. Everyone's different. But I'm curious from your perspective, like, what's obviously, I know that working for Tom probably has to be a nightmare on a daily basis, but what's your interest level in the future of going back to working in, an office or a brick and mortar location? Like, if you had to put that on a scale of 1 to 10, like 10, yes, I can't wait to get back, versus 1, I never want to work around other people again.
Right.
Where would you put that?
That's a hard question because I think working from home has its perks. And I think, being in person also has its perks in different ways. And I think the pandemic really changed, kind of going along with what you guys are saying, it changed the environment of how we work. It changed the entire platform of how we connect. And so given that was like the extra push, and now I am used to working from home. Sometimes it's hard because I don't have, coworkers you meet at work and kind of that social life, sure. But given what I'm doing, and definitely my busy schedule, I wouldn't be able to do it if online wasn't an option. I simply wouldn't be able to, keep going to school or what have you. So I think it really depends on your lifestyle, and it depends on what you want to get out of it. But I think for a lot of people, working on Zoom for the past few years has been a treat. I think we're all kind of leaning into. So I don't know what it's going to look like in the next few years. Coming from, I worked 5 years in retail, and we would always hear, so-and-so store is closing, and everybody's shopping online, and we're going to lose our jobs. And it was kind of like this frantic moment where everyone was realizing that they're shopping online. And it's so weird being in the brick and mortar and having to face that on the opposite side. Now I'm on the other side, I went to the dark side, but
Right.
being on the other side of it and seeing how advanced technology was becoming and how advanced it was for even making a podcast or creating something. I myself was able to do so much more compared to before. And I don't know, I just think it's interesting how technology has changed us and how we do have the opportunity to sit on here and record, and we all live in different places. And so yeah, it's kind of a hard question. I know that was a long response, but I think
Oh,
it
it's
really
great.
depends on your lifestyle, and it depends on if you want to wear pants again, or go out and talk to people and be human. So, but I think we're all comfortable with Zoom, and why not? It gives us so much flexibility. It gives us so
She's
much.
getting her master's degree in from Northwestern online, right? So it's a serious thing, and she's doing it all online. So it's incredible.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I do school and work online. So for me, it's just become my norm. I don't really think about it anymore, but I think sometimes like, it's kind of pops into my head like I'm not going out and socializing with coworkers, or I'm not going on campus and going to school events. So it depends on the person, I think, and it depends on what you want to get from it.
I always know when Abby's feeling like she needs some interaction, because she pings me and says, "Hey, when can we have a collaboration session?" And that's our collaboration space back there. And so I always know when she's feeling a little bit like she needs some human interaction.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
That definitely strikes me as something that, I think we're all still trying to figure out how to balance. Because, yes, everything you said, like, you're going to school, like the cost savings alone, right? I mean, you don't have to live in the Chicago area to go to Northwestern, which is incredibly expensive, right? Everything that comes with that, right? So just the housing cost alone, the moving cost, the travel if you want to go see family, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
On the flip side, though, right, the part that I think we are still navigating because it's been such a short time and we've made this transition so quickly is all the things, Abby and Tom, that you're talking about, that personal interaction piece and how often we get that and how we accomplish that, I think that's still,
Yeah.
we're not quite there yet.
We're not, and I think we're still going to be navigating that for quite a while. I mean, we're still unfortunately in a pandemic, and so we can't really foresee, what's going to happen in terms of being in office. This might become our norm for the next 5-10 years and stay that way. So I think it's important to kind of adapt and roll with the punches. I mean, as you know, we've all had to do that in the last few years, but yeah, just I guess following up with that, it's amazing what you can accomplish all on the computer versus doing person.
Again, and I'll plug Abby again. Sorry, Rob, for interrupting, but
go
she's
ahead.
been able to learn the BPO business. If you I don't know if you follow us on I think you do on social media, but we do a lot of different things with, we push it a little bit, right? We're pretty bold in terms of saying how we feel, and again, we kind of try to strike that chord of saying, don't buy these services the same way that you always have, or the way that the larger BPOs want you to. Let us help you. I mean, we do it. And Abby has done such a good job of learning our business, which, you and I have been doing this how long, right? And it's just ingrained in us. I mean, it's so it's pretty amazing that she's been able to grasp what we do. One, online, really,
Yeah.
and two, such a complex business. But I would encourage you to look at some of the postings that come out. They're pretty. She's kind of the sassy in our social media.
Hey, he can blame it on me, but as much as he's saying that,
I believe that. So speaking of, one of the things, I like to talk to people who are involved in this business, and it's so many different aspects of it. And Abby, I'm curious to hear from you, because you're involved in the marketing side. Number one, what platforms do you like to use? And is that different from a marketing perspective than it is from just like the personal kind of stuff that you do for social media?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So for a large majority of working with Tom, our main priority has been LinkedIn because that's the industry. But prior to this, as you said, I worked with a brick and mortar skincare company, and that was primarily Instagram. That was tangible product to buy, and this is the ingredients in it. And it was really the target market. It was younger women who are on Instagram, women who are on social media. And so it was honestly kind of hard to adapt coming in with Tom because I'm a very Instagram and ad, and this is what we put stories up, and this is what we need to do. And so coming on, I had to adapt. I didn't love the idea of posting on LinkedIn because I wasn't used to it. And I thought it was kind of crazy. But again, as Tom said, I didn't know the industry. And I had a lot to learn. So personally, I would say marketing is mainly on Instagram. It's mainly on Facebook, maybe not so much on LinkedIn. But again, it's the industry that you're in. What are you marketing? What do who's your target audience and why? And so I've learned that LinkedIn is the way to go, given, what we do. But it has definitely been interesting to kind of switch over to that.
So
yeah,
if I can add to that, Abby has gone from kind of selling tangible products to an awareness, because really that's what we're trying to create, is an awareness that there's companies like us out there, and there's a bunch of us,
right.
We all do a good job. There's all of our competitors. We don't consider them competitors. They're doing the same thing we are. We're just trying to disrupt the buy process for outsourcing, because it's frankly the way it's done today isn't effective. So for Abby, her ability to realize that marketing sometimes is an awareness thing more so than a selling a product thing. And she's done a good job with that.
Right.
Abby, by the way, so it was Lark, right? Skincare. That's
Yes. Yeah, you've
yeah,
done your
they're like a 20-minute drive from my house.
Really? I
Is
didn't
that
really
right?
think St. Louis.
He's in St. Louis, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're in Webster Groves and very
Yeah.
close.
I'm from there. Well, not St. Louis, St.
Oh,
Louis.
okay.
And that's I did my internship there and worked with them because that's actually where I'm from. So
Okay.
Those
Well,
are my
I am
Colorado
not
days.
from here, but last decade I've spent here. So I'm in Maryland Heights.
Okay. Yeah.
And but I actually I grew up in the Wichita area. Shout out to A-Town, Augusta, Kansas, which is where I went to high
Hey,
school.
I know where that is, honestly. And you want to know why? Because I drive through it.
How?
Kansas, I drive through and I see the signs. Who's living here? Where are the stores? So yeah.
Well, that's Western Kansas. I get it. I mean, once you
Where are
get
the
past
stores?
Wichita,
Yeah.
like that drive on I-70 from Wichita to Denver is brutal.
It's awful. Let's not sugarcoat it. It's the worst time of my life.
Brutal.
And it's what's around. What am I looking at? I see literal tumbleweeds flying.
Yes.
I thought that really wasn't a thing, but it is. It's Kansas.
Yeah. It's flat
Makes
as
you really
the
just
eye
want to
can
go out and
see.
do it, guys. I can tell you,
Oh yes. Tommy,
Now,
I'm actually gonna move
no.
and go there.
I will say it's not the worst drive I've ever made because I've driven I-10 through southwestern Texas,
Mm-hmm.
coming from Tucson to get to I-35 to go north. And there are parts of I-10 in Texas that are straight out of a horror movie. Like you're just like you're looking for you're like, if we see a gas station, I don't care that I have half a tank. I am filling up because I don't know if I'm ever going to see a person.
Yeah, but you can't go inside that gas station. It's like a pump and run, I'm sure.
Back when I was driving through that, you had to go in because that's how you paid.
Okay, yeah.
Once again, technology changes things, right?
There you go.
That's only because they hadn't talked to somebody for 4 days, so they kind of force it. They need the conversation.
That's right.
I mean,
Tumbleweeds.
pay at the pump is relatively new and like was adopted in the bigger cities, obviously, before the little tiny middle of nowhere gas station. Like those, you had to go in.
And I'm gonna comment on that. It's actually funny. I was telling my friend this the other day, and we were laughing. And I don't know if you guys can agree. It's definitely probably a millennial thing or Gen Z or what have you. But if I'm getting gas with my card for some reason, it says, please see cashier. I don't need the gas. I'm actually going to head out and I'm going to get it somewhere else probably. Like that's seriously how my brain works. I'm like, I don't really need it. And for what? Because I'm so just accustomed to pumping and leaving, So I've literally left a gas station before and I'm like, and that's just so hilarious to me because that's our norm,
Yeah, there definitely is a different, I think that speaks, number one, to customer experience. And I think that holds true across all kinds of things. And it's just understanding the behavior and the tolerance that your customers have for different things. And there are some generational differences.
Oh, for sure.
Because
Yep.
for you, right, and I'm probably the person who's I'm going to try a different pump. I'm just going to pull up 20 feet and I'm going to try the next pump and see if that takes care of the problem. And if it doesn't, maybe I'll go in or maybe I won't. It just depends.
But you don't want to, really. You don't
No,
really.
I don't.
So
unless I want to buy something anyway.
Yeah. Okay. But if you're not, you're like, how important is this really?
Move on. Yeah.
Well, that never happens to me at Costco because that's where I usually buy my gas and there's no cashier anyway. So
there you go.
Yeah. So, man, we have gotten off on some crazy
Some
stuff.
tangents.
Yeah,
Yes.
tangents. I love that because the tangents are what makes things interesting in life. So uh let's circle back a little bit, Tom. So you did not quite a decade with what eventually became Silzell.
That's right.
And then you moved on to another BPO that a lot of people have heard of. So tell us about that.
Yeah. Again, I've never loved working with or working for large BPOs. So I left Silzell because it got too cumbersome and just not ideal, right? To go to another small BPO at the time, about 215 million in revenue with maybe, gosh, 2 clients, 3 clients. AT&T was the biggest customer, but that was Alorica at the time. And when I joined Alorica, they were still, so Andy Lee, had founded the company. I don't recall how old they were at the time, but we were all part of the leadership team. I mean, we were charging the hill, and I loved my first several years at Alorica because you were out winning business and you were figuring out ways to do it, and you were, everything was a yes, and we figured it out, which that's what I love about small BPOs is, and really medium size is probably a better fit for that. But that's what I loved about it is culturally everybody's like, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. And we figured it out. And so that was a really, really fun time in my life. And, we were so successful, but like, every successful company, you grow. And we grew
Right.
not only through, success in new logos and selling, but also acquisitions. And, so Alorica ended up buying PRC and then West Agent Services and then, EGS. And so, you eventually they became the third largest. And, for me personally, that's never a position that I love to be in, even though we were having tremendous success, and they still have tremendous success. It's just not the environment that I love. So then I left Alorica, a couple of years ago. But yeah, so that was it. I think small from that. I like small, and then they grow, and then I like small again,
Yeah.
and then they grow. And so now I'm doing what I'm doing.
So I find it interesting what you're doing now because I think even though you haven't said this, I think people can read between the lines, but I'm going to say it is that shopping for an outsourced partner, there is no Amazon that you can go to and read reviews and understand what their capabilities are, and you're not buying a product, right? You're
That's
not
right.
buying a physical thing that you assume has a certain amount of quality control. And if someone says, hey, this product worked for me in this situation, and you're like, oh, that's my situation, like everybody's different. So when it comes to finding an outsourced partner, whether that's a new outsourced partner or you never outsourced before, like that process is really opaque.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
And so coming in for if someone were to reach out for someone like you, it's like, okay, well, it's not opaque for me because I know all of these different providers. I know what they're good at. I know what they're maybe not as good at. And it can really help someone navigate what would otherwise be, I can't even imagine what kind of challenge that would be. And I'm in the business.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to put it in perspective, and I spent a year researching different BPOs and figuring out who's who and who does what, because I had to take a year off when I left Alorica. And so, the idea was to build this business it took a while for me to actually get the idea, but I was looking for a job more than anything. And so I was doing all this research. And again, numbers are going to be broad, but there are 3,000 plus BPOs in the industry today. And I would bet that maybe 10 years ago, there were less than 300. And so, to your point, navigating and understanding who does what and who's good at what and who is going to give you as a client, as a buyer, give you the experience that you're looking for is a hard thing. And what typical buyers do, like all of us, they get on Google and they go, okay, give me the top 10 outsourcers. And that's how they end up talking to the larger BPOs, which is fine. That's great for them. But again, if you're less than 500 seats, then you're not going to get the experience you want. You're just not. And so that's where we come in, and we can help people with 500 seats too, or bigger, and we do. But overall, your point is right. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
And the good news is we have a magnet, right? And we know how to do it. So.
Yeah, and if you are way less than 500 seats, right? If you're 25 seats or you're even less than that, like those big boys don't even want to talk to you.
Less than 100. I mean, really, anything less than 100, and they don't even want you. If you're less than 500, you're not going to get much, in the way of support. So yeah, that's right, Rob. That's right.
Yeah. So I definitely, if any of the listeners are thinking about outsourcing or they need help for finding another partner, I would absolutely encourage them to check you guys out. But more importantly, find someone that can help them guide that. Like,
Yep.
if that's not your business, like, find someone to help you navigate that, because it's not easy. And I think that the the word consultant gets a bad name, and I think in some cases there's justifiable reason for that, depending on what type of consultant you're talking about. But when you need someone to help you, guide you, I know we've done this in the past just for the technology that we're looking for, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Having someone that knows what's out there, what it's good at, where the deficiencies are, understands the pricing that's out there that you can get, and can help you, right? Even when it comes to things like when it comes to contract negotiation, like
everything. Yeah.
they can help you understand, like, is this a good price? Am I?
Yeah. Yeah. Or is this term in the contract? Does that, is that right? I mean,
Right.
we're in the BPOs are in the contract business more than they are anything in most cases. They're going to send you a contract that's pretty darn one-sided, and we understand that. And to your point, we can help you navigate. The big difference is, we have various, we call ourselves advisors, by the way. Consultants are have a bad name, but when you go by, Rob, when you got a mortgage, you probably didn't go right to a bank. You used a mortgage broker. Or when you bought insurance, you probably used an insurance broker. When you plan for retirement, you probably used some kind of financial broker. We're no different. We don't charge the client for the service, because we have relationships and contracts with so many BPOs, and they're so anxious to get new opportunities, they pay us, right? And so it's such a no-brainer. It's crazy. And on the flip side, we also have consulting services and talent placement services and things that are more fee-based. But yeah, it's a fun business. We're having tons of fun. We like talking to clients. We like being able to go in and help, and we like disrupting the whole business model. I love it. I talk to people all the time that are with existing, large BPOs, and they're trying, in many cases, trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. And that's their sales process, where we can do anything. I mean, we can go anywhere.
Yeah.
We make it simple. We simplify the
Yeah,
process.
there's the marketing side.
There's the marketing coming in. Yeah.
We do.
We make CX simple.
That's right.
Abby, this has been a great conversation. I'm really glad that we did this. Two people at the same time, very different people. It allowed us to have a really interesting conversation. And Abby, thank you so much for sharing your entirely different perspective because it's just as valuable. Seriously, it really is valuable in understanding how I think too, from a customer experience standpoint, we all have to recognize what changes are coming and how people who are younger today look at things. And that can help us inform how we need to adapt as a business to get even better at improving the customer experience. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to see where it goes and trust the millennials.